Have you ever noticed that as soon as your child becomes anxious, your body changes too? Your heart starts racing, maybe your stomach drops, your mind just immediately starts searching for answers. What if they're not okay? Should I step in? Am I pushing too hard? Am I even doing enough? What if this gets worse? And before you know it, it isn't just your child who's anxious anymore, it's both of you. I don't think we talk enough about what it's like to be the parent in those moments. The one that's trying to stay calm while your mind is racing. The one that's reassuring your child that everything is going to be okay, while part of you is wondering the exact same thing. Hi, I'm Catherine O'Brien. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Sacramento, California. I'm also a mom, and I'm a founder of Happy with Baby, where I work with parents and couples through some of the messier parts of family life. There is something I've learned both personally and professionally, that our child's anxiety has an incredible ability to wake up our own. And so today I want to talk about what happens when your child's anxiety becomes your anxiety and how you can support them without losing yourself in the process. The fears change as our children grow. Anxiety doesn't suddenly appear when children start school. There's some forms of anxiety that are actually a normal part of development. So think about a baby who suddenly cries when grandma reaches out to hold them, even though grandma has held them 100 times before. Stranger anxiety commonly emerges during the second half of that first year of life as babies become better at distinguishing familiar people from unfamiliar ones. Then that baby becomes a toddler who may cling to your leg when you try to leave them at preschool. And preschool arrives and maybe drop off suddenly feels impossible. Later, the worries change. Will I have anyone to play with? What if I can't do the work that I'm assigned? What if I don't make the team? What if everyone else knows what they're doing and I don't? Then adolescence brings an entirely different set of worries. There's friendships, belonging, identity, academics, sports, relationships, driving, college, and just figuring out who you're becoming. And eventually we're watching our children step into adulthood and realizing we have even less control than we did before. The fears change as our children grow, but our love for them doesn't. And I think that's important because anxiety isn't automatically evidence that something has gone wrong. Sometimes anxiety shows up because our children are doing something new. They're separating from us. They're exploring the world. They're taking a risk or just stepping into the next developmental stage. Growth requires uncertainty. And here's the part I think we sometimes forget. Our children aren't the only ones who have to tolerate that uncertainty. We do too. And sometimes anxiety is more than a developmental stage. I want to pause here because this distinction really matters to me. There's a big difference between the everyday anxiety that can accompany development and living with an anxiety disorder like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic, severe separation anxiety, or another emotional mental health condition. Now, if you're parenting a child who is struggling significantly with anxiety, I don't want you hearing this video as just stay calm and stop reassuring your child, or just stay calm and stop rescuing your child. That is not what I'm saying here. Some children need specialized treatment and support, and depending on what your child is experiencing, what looks like helping from the outside can be much more complicated for the family that's living it every day. Now, if your child's anxiety is consistently interfering with sleep, school, their relationships, activities they want to participate in, or everyday family functioning, it's worth talking with their pediatrician or a licensed mental health professional who works specifically with children and anxiety. There are effective treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. It has substantial evidence for treating anxiety in children and adolescents. There's also exposure and response prevention, or ERP, which is a first-line behavioral treatment for OCD. So I'll put some resources in the description below because you don't have to figure out exactly what your child needs before you're allowed to ask for help. And I also want to say something else that I think gets forgotten. When a child is struggling significantly, the family needs support too, because the family is also affected. When their anxiety activates yours, regardless of whether we're talking about everyday developmental worries or a child who needs more intensive support, there's another person in this equation that we don't talk about nearly enough. You. Because watching someone you love struggle is really hard. You might notice that you're losing sleep. Maybe you're replaying something that happened at school, researching late at night, checking on your child more than usual, worrying about what tomorrow will bring, or wondering whether you made the right decision. And sometimes we don't even realize how activated we've become because we're so focused on our child. Our bodies react to distress before we've had time to think about what's happening. Maybe your shoulders tighten, your breathing gets shallower, your stomach drops, your thoughts start moving faster. And that's your nervous system trying to protect someone you love. And that's where I think we need to get curious rather than critical. So before asking, how do I make my child less anxious? It can help to ask, what's happening inside me right now? Am I scared? Am I imagining the worst case scenario? Am I feeling guilty? Am I trying to make the situation easier because my child needs that right now? Or because I need their anxiety to stop so that mine will stop too? Now, that's a hard question. I've actually had to ask it of myself as a parent. Understanding anxiety professionally doesn't somehow make me immune to what happens when one of my own children is struggling. There have absolutely been moments when I've wanted to step in, solve something, make something easier, or know for certain that everything was going to turn out okay. I think that's a part of loving our kids. The goal isn't to stop having those feelings, it's to notice what we're doing with them. Your child doesn't need you to be fearless. We sometimes talk about parents being the calm one, and I think that can create another impossible expectation. You don't have to be perfectly calm. You don't have to hide every emotion. And you certainly don't have to pretend you've never worried. Your child needs something much more realistic. They need you to be able to return to steady. Your children especially rely heavily on co-regulation. So before children can consistently manage their own big emotions on their own, they depend on responsive caregivers to help them settle. Attachment research has also long described caregivers as a secure base. A relationship provides enough safety for children to explore and return when they need connection. And I like thinking about that as being an anchor. An anchor doesn't make the waves disappear. It provides steadiness while the waves are happening around it. And sometimes being that anchor sounds like, I can see that you're scared, or this is really hard, and even I'm right here. Or you could say, we don't have to figure everything out this second. Even, I believe you can do hard things and I'm here with you while you do them. Notice what we're not saying. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. We're also not saying, you're right, this is horrible, this is terrible. We're acknowledging the feeling without automatically confirming the fear. And that's an important distinction. Validation says your feelings make sense. It doesn't necessarily say everything your anxiety is telling you is true. So when helping starts taking over everything, this is where things can become especially difficult for parents. When someone we love is struggling, our world can slowly begin organizing itself around keeping them okay. We monitor, we anticipate, we research, we change plans, we communicate with teachers, doctors, therapists, coaches, family members. We become experts in triggers. We try to stay one step ahead of the next hard moment, and sometimes those things are absolutely necessary. Advocacy is part of parenting, and there are times our children genuinely need us to step in. But I think there's another question worth asking. Has helping my child started consuming me? And maybe you haven't seen friends in months. Maybe you and your partner barely talk about anything besides your child. And maybe you're not sleeping. Maybe you feel guilty even leaving the house because something might happen while you're gone. Every bit of your emotional energy is going towards monitoring how your child is doing. And maybe someone asks you how you're doing and you don't even know how to answer anymore. That's the part I don't think we talk enough about. When a child is struggling, almost every resource understandably focuses on the child. But what treatment do they need? What should the school do? What accommodations would be helpful? What should we do at home? Those are important questions, but I want to add another one. Who's helping you? Because somewhere in the process of caring for your child, I don't want you to disappear. And I'm not talking about some unrealistic version of self-care where I'm telling an overwhelmed parent to go get a massage and everything will magically feel better. I'm talking about actual support. And maybe that's your own therapist. Maybe it's a friend you can call and say, today was a really hard day. Maybe it's letting your partner take over while you go for a walk. Maybe it's protecting an hour where the conversation isn't about your child's anxiety. Maybe it's continuing something you love even when part of you feels guilty for enjoying yourself while your child is struggling. Maybe it's sleeping. Maybe it's asking family for help. Maybe it's even simply admitting this is affecting me too. Supporting a child through anxiety can be emotionally exhausting, especially when the struggle is ongoing, and you are allowed to acknowledge that without making your child's struggle all about you. Because both things can be true. Your child can be having a hard time, and you can be having a hard time because your child is having a hard time. There's room for both. So don't let anxiety shrink everyone's world. There's another balance I want to talk about carefully. When we're worried about our children, avoiding whatever makes them anxious can bring immediate relief. And sometimes stepping back or changing a plan really is the appropriate move. But if avoidance becomes the only way a family manages anxiety, the family's world can gradually become smaller and smaller. We stop going places, we cancel things, we speak for our child before they get a chance to answer. We remove uncertainty whenever we can. And again, this comes from love. But with many anxiety disorders, avoidance can maintain the anxiety over time. And that's part of why evidence-based treatment often helps children gradually approach fear situations with the appropriate support rather than organizing life entirely around avoiding distress. The key word there is gradually. This isn't about throwing children into situations they're not prepared for or withholding comfort. And for children with OCD or significant anxiety, I strongly encourage working with a clinician that's trained in the appropriate treatment rather than trying to figure out exposure strategies on your own. Our goal isn't to force bravery. It's to help children build the experience. I was anxious, I had support, and I got through it. And that's where confidence comes from. What do you do when you're the one spiraling? So let's make this really practical. Your child is anxious. You feel yourself getting anxious. What now? First, notice your body before you try to fix the situation. Put your feet on the floor, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, slow exhale, and give yourself a second before responding if you can. You might silently tell yourself, my child is anxious and I'm noticing that I'm getting anxious too. That tiny bit of separation matters. Their feeling doesn't automatically have to become your feeling. Next, ask yourself what your child actually needs from you right now. Do they need comfort, information, professional help, a boundary, encouragement, or do they simply need someone to sit beside them while the feeling passes? And finally, remind yourself that you don't have to solve their entire future in this moment. And I think parents do this all the time. Something happens on Tuesday and suddenly we're mentally living 6 months from now. So bring yourself back. What does my child need now? And what do I need so I can keep showing up for them? Sometimes these two questions are enough to interrupt the spiral. You are the anchor, not the ocean. So I keep coming back to this idea of being an anchor because I think it captures something important about parenting. When our babies are frightened by unfamiliar people, they look for us. When toddlers venture away from us, they often look back. And when children walk into school, they want to know we'll be there when they come out. Teenagers may act like they don't need us at all, but they still benefit from knowing there's a steady place to return to. And even when our children become adults, there will probably be moments when the phone rings and they need to hear a familiar voice on the other end. Being their anchor doesn't mean controlling the ocean. We simply can't do that. We can't guarantee that they'll never be rejected. We can't guarantee they'll never experience heartbreak. We can't guarantee they'll never struggle with their mental health. We can't guarantee that life will always be kind to them. What we can do is communicate, you don't have to face this alone, and we can model something else at the same time. Neither do I. Supporting them without losing yourself. If you're watching this because your child is struggling right now, I hope they get exactly the support that they need. And I hope you hear something else today. I hope you remember the parent sitting beside that child deserves support too. Parenting asks us to do something incredibly difficult. We love someone more than we knew was actually possible. And then we have to watch them face challenges we cannot face for them. From stranger anxiety to preschool drop-off to friendship struggles to driving away from us for the first time, Parenting is a long practice in loving someone while tolerating uncertainty. The fears change, our love doesn't. Your job isn't to raise a child who never feels anxious, and your job isn't to become a parent who never worries. Your job is to keep returning to reconnection, to curiosity, to steadiness, to yourself. We walk beside our children. We advocate when they need us. We get professional help when it's needed. We believe in them when they're having trouble believing in themselves. And along the way, we remember to care for the caregiver too, because supporting your child should never require losing yourself. Your child deserves support, and so do you. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this conversation helped you, I'd love for you to subscribe, and I'll put resources for childhood anxiety and OCD in the description below. And I'll see you next week.